Okay, so when you're thinking about Leapfrog and you know, the new relationship and how to tie those pieces together, I think at the core, think about it as, look, this is a company that was built by marketers to solve the challenges that marketers are facing in dealing with today's digital consumer. So from that perspective come a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today. And as you flow through, I want to kind of connect back to a couple of the comments from yesterday, in the sessions yesterday. One, I'm going to loosely quote Brent from B of A, who went down the path of, I think he said finally, but I was allowed to run a closed loop test, and the results were so starkly different that nobody would believe them. So now I have to run them again, okay? And then Jeremy talked a lot about legacy as large brands with pre-existing infrastructure are trying to migrate, okay? We're looking at those situations and used to those situations and saying, look, if we can come in with a solution that can drive conversion rates 20% higher or more, okay? Now, to all the great work that you're doing with iProspect, you've got a connection that grows your business, okay? And so what we're really doing is working with brands to infuse a connection between marketing and the marketing strategy and the issues associated with executing that via technology and data, okay? And secondarily, that as we integrate the technology, now we can start to connect the data. And as we can start to connect the data, we can actually see a consumer journey and start to impact that consumer journey, which is going to produce the kind of lifts that I was talking about just a minute ago. And then finally, because we live in the dynamic world that we do, we want to create a virtuous circle so that, again, you can continue to learn, you can continue to adapt. It's not just a one and done kind of cycle, okay? So I got to be fast, so I'm going to jump to the next thing. These are the common kinds of challenges that we see from the brands that we work with, okay? So from a technological standpoint, lots of interesting pieces of technology. Some of them may be legacy, some may be ad tech, some may be VAR tech, but they tend to be slivers as opposed to a horizontal connection, okay? And once you get into that, I'm speaking generally, but once you get into that kind of situation, now all of a sudden your data looks exactly the same, okay? It's not horizontally connected, and as a result of that, you don't really have a consumer view. You have component part views, and when it comes down to optimization, allocation of budgets, you know, setting up your priorities, it's very difficult to do. And it certainly is very difficult to do on a continuous basis. And then finally, you get to, again, very large organizations going through rapid change. The teams that are involved in affecting all these things may be discrete, may be having different goals, may be having different priorities and different conversations. So connecting these things together in a pragmatic way, and this is all about the pragmatic thought process of, look, we're going to lift conversion rates, we have to be clear on objectives. Here's a way to do that in spite of these issues, okay? So there is a process so that, again, we can clearly understand it and we can clearly execute it again and again and again. So it starts with what's the goal, what are the issues that we're facing, and how do we think about those things as a team? That then starts to connect to all the work that you're doing with iProspect in terms of who is that consumer prospect, how are we targeting them in media, what data are we gathering. Now, to where Mike was just a minute ago, we want to connect that into the experience. Whether that experience is running in parallel to a base experience or it is the base experience, we don't really care, okay? The point is, let's go get the learnings and drive that conversion rate optimization. Once we've got it, we now have the capacity to measure, we now have the capacity to see where the potential is, and we start moving up the scale right again to, okay, what's the next round? And as marketers, we're just moving in a cycle, which is what you really want to be able to do, but it's very difficult to do in today's world. So anyway, that's it for the kickoff spiel. Let me bring Tony up. We've got 3 case studies we want to walk you through in terms of kind of typical challenges. I'll turn it over to him. We're going to try and stick to our 15 minutes.
Thank you, Dave.
Hope I didn't talk too fast.
Sounded pretty good from where I was.
Okay.
All right, so I've heard it only 7 times.
22 years and 15 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Here we go. So
compression
three case studies that I want to talk to you about. And these are the typical challenges that we've seen with clients and or have heard in the marketplace, right? 1, how do I generate real value from testing and optimization? Okay. 2, I really have a hard time delivering personalized experiences at scale. And then the third one, which I think Dave was alluding to, is cross-channel tracking and optimization. Well, a lot of times people can track across channels, they have a hard time optimizing. Or they might optimize, but it's only within one channel. This is about how do you optimize across both channels or multiple channels. So from there, let's talk a little bit about testing and optimization. All right, so as Dave and Joel said, I get the sexy case study here, so this is gonna be the fun one, right? The other two are kind of a little boring and not as much fun. But
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thanks
that,
for
buddy.
setting Joel up on
I did,
that.
yeah, so now he's gotta have a tough time working it.
I'll be dancing. Thank you.
This is all about how do you gain value out of the machine learning and testing and optimization. So it really boils down to, can you understand the consumer? Do you, as you understand that consumer, as they're coming into the experience, what data sets do you have that you can leverage to optimize and deliver a personalized experience to them? And then the last part is, do you have the technology that actually enables you to deliver it across every single device that that consumer might be on? So the core thing here is we leverage machine learning as a way to make smarter decisions about what experience, what message, and what device, and how to show that all across the different parts of the journey. And you use that to actually help gain your conversion optimization. So, client here, Chamberlain University. You have the technology, but the other part is you have to have process. And so we have this very structured process that we work through, and it's really about delivering a hypothesis-driven learning agenda that allows you to iterate your tests over time so that you're really kind of building up into a way of understanding, capturing gains, and then extending those gains, right? So the big challenge you face is coming up with that learning agenda and coming up with those hypotheses. In this case study, we're going to talk about 3 different tests that we ran, all within one experience, that resulted in significant gains in conversion. So, first hypothesis we had was, how do we actually differentiate the brand in a very highly competitive, price-sensitive marketplace? So we worked on hero messaging, right? We focused in on one of them was flexibility, second one was delivering high-quality message, and the third one was about community and support. 3 different messages, all being delivered individually in real time to different consumers. Second part of the test, which was within the form, which was a big thing, we had some drop off in the form. How do you then further alleviate any friction in the form completion process? So we added some language in the form that tried to alleviate that friction, make it less hard to understand where they were in the process. And we, as you can tell, 2 different versions. Again, those were being iterated with the prior versions. So now you're at 3 times 2 in terms of different opportunities or different types of experiences. And then the last one is actually tailoring the overall site to the consumer based on their intent. So you have researchers would get one experience, right? This was for those who are upper funnel. And then we started to break them down for this client in terms of general interest but high intent, or product interest and high intent. And they received different messaging and completely different experiences, all done in real time. So what did that net out? Well, we got on the first one, right, giving them the different messaging, 4% lift in conversion. And the second one, in terms of the form, that drove an incremental 12%. And then the last one with the sites, it drove 23%. So the beauty of this is that it's not only do you get it, but because the machine is constantly running, you actually hold on to those gains because you're starting to break down your audience into microsegments that allows you to hold on to those different variations against those audiences as they're coming through. So it allows you over the time to actually hold and maintain your optimization gains, as usually, like most people would find, that their optimization kind of falls off over time. So that's the beauty of what we've been doing with the optimization and how it works across both process and the technology. So I'm going to turn it over to Joel, and he's going to take you through the next case
So while
study.
Joel comes up, I mean, for the marketers in the room, look at these numbers. Run the math in your head. Think about what the bottom line impact would be to your campaign if you were seeing these results. It's dramatic. This is real bottom line impact.
All right. So thinking about delivering on that kind of ongoing testing and being able to hang on to those gains, requires a lot of infrastructure. It requires the ability to be changing content out very, very quickly across multiple different concurrent tests in a way that is not disruptive to the overall flow of your campaigns. And so when we look at trying to solve that problem with some of the technology that you've heard about in the last couple days, we have a couple different ways to approach that, right? We have the ability to do different kinds of reuse of content components so that we can swap things out very, very quickly. We also have the ability to do large amounts of cloning of whole experiences for consumers across multiple touch points. And most powerfully, as we'll talk about in a second, we're happy to have some now shared clients together in the room from Anthem, the ability to pull from multiple different disparate data sources, whether it's a CRM system, a DMP, any other third-party or first-party data source that you have, and use that to plug into the content and create literally infinite variations in content to enable testing and personalization. So in the case of Anthem, what this allowed us to do was to take somewhere in the neighborhood of 750 versions of the same site, maintained separately across a variety of different people and teams and with different content, and shrink that down into one single site with infinite variations. Okay, I think 88 domains was probably the max of where we were at. If Monique can keep something like that, right? And so we're dealing with not only the complexity of 17 brands and 14 brands in 17 states, but all of the regulatory issues that go with working in healthcare, making sure that all those pieces, all those I's were dotted and T's were crossed in a repeatable, scalable fashion. And you can see the benefits here were not only in terms of the actual life cycle of making this something that was not a strain on your organization, but also providing insight and understanding into how consumers are passing through the process, what works and what doesn't work. Real revenue outcome, as you can see in some of the numbers that we produced, but also equally importantly, from a regulatory compliance perspective, we were able to automate the process of sharing what each consumer saw at any given moment. So all sorts of value in that regard. Last case study we're going to run.
Before you leave that,
sure.
How long did it take you to go from start to we're live?
Well, Monique can answer the question of how long it took for us to do the CRM integrations and all of that stuff, but a very, very short. I would say the amount of actual engineering time to get that lit up was about 6 weeks.
Yeah, we're very aggressive. We had a week meeting.
Yep.
And they did great. Flawless.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Monique.
Oh, flawless is good. Flawless is our goal. So the last case study I want to run you through is about a really, really challenging issue, and that's doing cross-channel tracking and optimization. And so when we look at many of our clients, and I'm sure this is the case for many of you in the room, being able to understand how the consumer is moving from different touch points from channel to channel, both in their interaction with media and on their device, and whatever other physical interactions they may have with your brand in a retail store or perhaps in the call centers is often the case for us. How do you keep track of all those intersections and create a single view of what took place so that you can optimize? And so what our platform allows us to do is to pull data from all of those different places, synchronize them together, integrate them, and use them to provide some wonderful transparency for marketers. A couple different examples, and we'll talk to how this produced results for our client Cox Communications. We have an integrated view, visualizations which show transparently what's happening in the interrelation between media activity, site and device activity, and what's taking place in the call center. So pulling all the results at a very, very granular level into one view that a marketer can look at and say, okay, I understand how I might need to make changes. In this case, in an SEM example, how might I change my bids and my budgets as it relates to search? Same thing as it relates to what's happening on device, right? Can I see the consumer's path and how different intersections might result in different outcomes so that we can change the messaging and change the creative, whether for testing or just when we find something that works, keeping it in place. And last, in the call center, or equally true in situations where we might want to talk to a field sales force of some kind, can we see how this particular set of advertisements result in performance when someone's talking to someone on the phone, or the IVR message that they hear, or the script that they're read? All of those things are available for you at a very, very granular level to understand, and the results are pretty dramatic. In the case of Cox, this optimization allowed us to grow mobile sales to over 10% of their total online sales just in 3 months. So very, very quick returns on that investment. You can see the cost per acquisition dramatically dropped, and I think the piece that was super important to them was, I can now take all this cost out of the call center because I know how to optimize the on-device experience to make more consumers convert on their device and not spend all of the time and money associated with minutes in the call center. So super powerful and very, very useful in providing insight. what we want to, I forgot my animation. What we want to leave you with is a couple really important points. One is that driving and achieving significant conversion lift requires these three challenges to be solved, right? You have to be able to deliver value from your testing and optimization, and not just in testing in your media, which we know you're already getting great service around, but testing of that entire personalized experience. The second piece is, can you do it at scale? So it's great to be able to deliver tests and personalization in small chunks, but to really deliver meaningful revenue for your brand, you have to do this at scale, and that requires automation infrastructure, and we're really excited to be able to provide that for some of you. And finally, can you track consumers as they move from channel to channel and device to device to understand how you should improve the experience for them? That's what our platform, our people, our process do, and we're really excited to share it with you. Thanks.
22 years and 16 minutes. So you have 4 minutes of questions.
Okay, great. That's 4 years per question, so please be wise in your question.
I told you.
Come back out.
Yeah, yeah.
Where's the audience data coming from?
So audience data can come from a couple different places. Usually when we're working together with whoever's managing the media, we're provided information from whatever those campaign systems may be. If there's a CRM system in play and we can get first-party customer data, so that audience is essentially who's customer, who's non-customer, or past customer. What we built is a way to integrate audience data from whatever source. So however you're able to get us that information, we'd love to be able to use it.
You got a question back there?
How do you handle dynamic content at scale in a regulated market? So what worked for Anthem when you're able to create some of these landing pages?
Monique, you want to take a whack at that first, and then I'll respond?
Well, yes, like you said, spreadsheets. We initially started out from spreadsheets and shredding it down, and then handed it over to Joel, and he put it in his gonculator and
Not supposed to say about the calculator.
That's the secret word.
Never reveal our secret.
And it was great because the legal, because we do have 14 states, every brand has different legal, and they were able to make it easily dynamic, pop in and out depending on the state, give it to the DOI for their regulation purposes. We were able to archive it at the state level, the time level, as we changed it. I can't say enough. It was really amazing for me.
Yeah, we use a couple different tools. So part of it is a tool set that we use for actually managing the content. So Leapfrog marketing operations teams will, created all the different variations. We sat down and talked with Monique and others at Anthem for a while to think about how can we consolidate this and make it a little bit more sustainable in structure. But then we put an automated tool in place that literally takes screenshots of every single variation at any given time of day, so that the process of being able to pull, what do you need to see regulatory was easily achieved.
Thanks, guys, for presenting. That was very robust. One question maybe for you guys or your client. How do you guys define the conversion? I saw, you had 3 scenarios and the different conversion.
Great question.
Differences there. How did you guys define that?
So all the case studies are defined either as the very first one, it was site conversion. So what happened on the site and how did we change conversion rates there? The Cox one is actually front to end conversion, right? So we set up different KPIs depending upon what the business objective is. But those were, if we go back, maybe.
Yeah, sure. And Cox is, the actual dollars that they received.
It can be whatever.
It's
point of sale data. Like we can close the loop completely. If you're a retailer, bring all the point of sale information into the system.
Right, so on this one, you're actually looking at, this is revenue data, so this is based on revenue, right? So we're getting return files from Cox on what the sale was, what the value of that sale was at a individual household level, and then we're just putting it back into the system and calculating it. So we could pick a KPI anywhere across the conversion funnel.
So your slide shows that
We're done.
infinite possible combinations.
Yeah, sure.
From a practical perspective, how many segments do you typically see as best practice when you're personalizing something?
Sure. You do a marketing answer, I'll do a technical answer.
Okay, so from a marketing perspective, here's how we think about it, right? So it's actually more about how do you start to define the audience that you're not converting, right? So most of the time if you do an A/B test, you're actually converting a certain percentage of an audience. The idea with the real-time optimization is I could actually start to create multiple microsegments at an individual level, and I really don't care, because all I want to do is if I can find in that next 20% Another 2% that I can convert with a specific experience? Doesn't matter. Great, I want to hold that. I want to be able to identify those people and their lookalikes, and then I want to hold that and want to market to those lookalikes constantly that experience. And then I want to move on to the next one, right? So here's what we found is, it could be anywhere from 10 to 15, right? And what we define them as is more behavioral based versus traditional, I'll call it demographic, psychographic segments, right? Because you're really trying to get to what are the behavioral segments and how do I get conversion out of the behavioral segments versus the traditional demographic descriptive segments. Technically, do you want to answer?
Technically, we can create an infinite number of segments. So there's.
It's right.
And so we're out of time, but if you guys have questions or want to see a demonstration of the technology, these guys are prepared and ready. Just come talk to them later today.